A listener out of Westlock says, I've got my popcorn and milk duds ready. Let's get this debate started. We've been looking forward to this quite literally for weeks. We're calling it Faith versus Atheism, a Friday morning debate. It is my pleasure right now to welcome to the program Kevin Olenek. He's the host of Agree or Disagree, the podcast. He's a well-known blogger based out of Calgary. While known for stirring the pot, he claims to love listening and challenging other people's perspectives. Kevin believes we can learn from each other if we actually listen. Kevin, is it fair to call you a man of faith?
It is very fair to call me a man of faith. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Luke Fevin's been on the show before. He's the director of the Society of Edmonton Atheists. He's also a self-described secular rights activist, especially when it comes to Alberta's education system. If you're interested, the Society of Edmonton Atheists has a great interactive Facebook group, and Luke can often be found causing trouble on Twitter as according to Luke. Luke Fevin, welcome back to the program.
Good to be here.
Now, the two of you actually pitched this together. The two of you had talked about this. You decided you wanted to square off, but I was surprised to find out that you've actually just met in person for the first time about 10 minutes ago.
That's true. I usually argue with Luke on Facebook and Twitter. It's nice to tell him he's wrong in person.
So why was a debate like this, faith versus atheism, so important to you, Luke?
I think we need to be able to talk about religion more and better. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. Religion is one of those subjects that we seem to struggle with, and it's important that we're able to discuss it with a good attitude.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I struggled with is because of the notion of being a person of faith. For some people will have either a positive or a negative connotation to it, or an expectation. There would probably be an expectation from some of the listeners out there that I would be a 6-day literalist, take the book of Genesis and crack that down as like, this is the science of how the earth was formed. Or I would be a person that might be against the LGBTQ community, which we talked about a little bit earlier, and that's not the case for me. So I do think that there's an important conversation around where faith fits within our culture and how it should be appropriately placed within our culture as opposed to what we normally have been seen as a public perception.
Because I'll tell you, Kevin, we've been promoting this debate for quite some time. It's technically, it has the more of a feel of a conversation, because I think the two of you might actually respect each other a little bit too much to really dig in here, though I have no feeling that you'll pull punches once we get the ball rolling.
We'll see.
But Kevin, when listeners knew that you were coming on here to represent the faith side of things, they were gleefully suggesting, based on topics we've already covered today, oh, please bring up pride. Please bring up Bill 10. Please bring up carbon dating and the dinosaurs and paleontology. You're right. People do tend to pigeonhole people of faith. So can you be a man of faith and a man of science at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. I don't see how any of that is different. I don't see how my faith in a God and a deity or a God or a deity, however you want to put that as a perspective, and how you look at science can be any different. Science is obvious. I mean, science is you can't use the Bible as an example of science. It's not a science textbook. It was written far too long ago to be used specifically as a science textbook. We've obviously have advanced far from there. So yeah, I think it's very possible to be a man of faith, a man of science. I think it's kind of, I actually think that the two separate is kind of disingenuous in a lot of ways. I think it feels to me like we make this if you either are religious and you don't understand science, or you are a person of science and you don't understand faith. And I think both can work together because they do work together.
But don't you have to believe that the Bible is infallible? Because once you start to acknowledge cracks in the armor, then the whole thing crumbles. Because much of a faith perspective, a faith-based perspective, relies on the infallibility of truth contained within that Holy Scripture.
It depends on how you look at the Bible. Do you look at the Bible as a book that has a whole bunch of rules, regulations that we absolutely 100% live our life by, that all stories in the Bible are literally true? It's an instruction book. It's, as Brian McLaren calls it, a constitution. Do you look at it like that? Or do you look at it as stories that we can take and glean from life and have value in them, and not necessarily have to worry specifically about the rules, but maybe reflect more, why are those rules there, positively or negatively? Are they relevant for us in 2015 sitting in this room? Are they something specifically for a culture of the time? So my point to that is, I think we need to be a little bit more critical of how we look at Scripture, as opposed to everything that we read and everything that we assume is correct. There's a number of different translations of the Bible. Luke will probably verify that. There's been a lot of debate about translation of the Bible over time. We, as a man of faith, I would have to acknowledge that that's true. And there's some valid criticism about actual accuracy. It's not... So for me to sit here as a man of faith and to dismiss that, I don't think is being disingenuous to an audience and disingenuous to a public when the facts are out there that that's true.
Luke, how do you view people of faith? Are you an atheist and then, in the same sense, someone who believes religion is bad? Do those two perspectives have to be hand in hand?
Firstly, I have no problem with people of faith. There are good people and there are not so good people, and faith seems to have very little to do with that. As far as religion itself is concerned, I am an anti-theist. So I'm an atheist. That literally and simply means I don't believe in gods. Any of the 3,000 that man has managed to concoct over the years, I don't believe in any of them. But I'm also an anti-theist, and that means that I think that religion has a net negative effect on humanity. So let's get into what is it, John 8:32? I think that's what it all comes down to. The truth will set you free. So when we talk about religion, Kevin's here talking about the Bible being a great set of stories, but it is a wonderful set of stories, but it isn't sold as a set of stories, is it? It is sold as a truth. It is sold as a series of truth claims with all manner of other paraphernalia attached to it, to do with afterlife and rules and expectations and
commandments.
Yes, and all this kind of stuff. And so my issue with religion is this. Humans, both individually and collectively, are better off dealing with reality as it is, not how we wish it was. And religion does not accurately describe reality.
Here's a very pointed question from Tyler, who's listening in. And again, I want to remind you, if you're tuned in right now, you are an important part of this conversation, regardless of what your belief system is. We want to hear from you. 630 is how you can text us. Tyler, a question to Kevin. The Bible specifically says that it is the Word of God. Is it possible to be a Christian, but at the same time question the validity of the Bible?
Yes. Quite simply, yes, because there are a lot of stories, and there's a lot of difficult text and stories in there that are tough to wrestle with. You think of instantly the story of Noah, right? That's an interesting question. You can even think of, if not read properly, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm sure we'll get into this at some point, and someone will ask about that. We'll get into that at some point. So yeah, I think that you can question the stories and the validity of the Bible and still be a follower of Christ. In my mind, a follower of Christ simply believes the central message of Christianity, I believe, is Jesus is the Son of God. He died and rose again in 3 days. That's the central focus. The Bible is an aspect of what Christianity is, but the main focus should be Jesus, in my opinion.
I want to read Jason here listening in from Edmonton is making a good point, and I think that Jason probably represents a lot of people. He says, why do folks always label people who believe in God as members of the Flat Earth Society? I believe in evolution, and I am a man of science. My only difference with atheists is that I believe an intelligent being designed and laid out the laws of the physical universe, and at the same time, from the astrophysical laws to quantum physical laws, this ancient being initiated the Big Bang and is responsible for evolution as well.
Can I handle that?
Please do, Luke.
I think for a lot of us that are atheists or even anti-theists, I don't have an issue with people that believe in what we'll call a prime mover. If you think that there's some kind of bigger being or higher power that kickstarted all this, I don't see the evidence for it myself, but I could understand how someone got there. No biggie. Where I do have an issue is when people start making claims to know what the creator of the universe thinks about things. The moment someone says, I know God doesn't want you to eat fish on Fridays, that's when the trouble starts. So let me give you an example. I know we get lots of good things. You know, Uncle Bob managed to stop his drinking, and that was fantastic. And Martha and Pete, work at the soup kitchen because of their faith. So people are motivated to do good things from their faith. I understand that, but there's another side, and there's a tremendous cost to it in claiming to know what a creator of the universe thinks about things. So we'll take Africa. There's 1 billion plus people in Africa. There's a lot of poverty. Women are treated very, very poorly, and there's a lot of disease. And there is a guy sat in a palace in a frock and a pointy hat who claims to be the telephone between the creator of the universe and all mankind. And he is telling that 1 billion people in Africa to not wear condoms. Now, this is the point at which I get upset with religion and claims to knowledge that is obviously unknowable.
But is that to me speaks to, I think the heart of that issue though is maybe the heart of what your concern is in my mind, and maybe what the texter was mentioning as well. Me as a person would actually agree with you. I don't know how a person in a pointy hat can tell people not to wear condoms, and I'm sure that texter that just talked in would say that as well. So I think maybe the part of the heart of the issue is there a healthy expression of your faith? Is there a healthy way to say, okay, look, of course we want people to wear condoms during sex. Of course we want that. But how do you create a sort of a healthier environment without that sort of the fear base that religion has been well known for? How do you create a healthier environment for that to happen, for someone to stand up to that or to respond to that in an intelligent manner?
So, Kevin, as a man of faith, do you, in a sense there, acknowledge, you just used the word fear, has religion lost some of its credibility through the ages?
I think there's two answers to that. I think that there's been a public perception of people making claims, and we have a number of different names, I don't need to go into them, that have made I would say and argue a mockery or a political statement around religion for their own selfish gain. But there's also have been people that have been very quiet about their faith, and you hear nothing about, that have spoken to their neighbor and have provided comfort and provided value. That's the kind of stuff I think that creates more of a validity to religion. I think the public political stuff, I think that's where people really want to dismiss the conversation, and it disqualifies a lot of us in faith because of statements like that Luke just mentioned.
I think it's important for listeners that don't know my background, for me to clarify. I was raised in the Protestant church. I attended a private Christian school till grade 9, a public school after that. I have a diploma in theology, a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Science from faith-based Trinity Western University. I think it's important people need to understand that I'm not piling on religion right now, that I speak from a background of nearly 40 years of exposure to it. But Kevin, the reason why I say all that is because right now I want to say that when it comes to supporting fellow citizens, when it comes to showing love, many times people will claim that their faith is what's driving that action. And that may very well be the case. But where it gets somewhat lost on me, or at least becomes tough to process, is when we look at people that are doing wonderful things in the name of their Judaism, in the name of Islam, in the name of Buddhism, in the name of whatever it is, a Baha'i faith, or whatever the faith, or maybe an atheist. Atheists from time to time, Luke, I think atheists, the odd time, have done a good thing, haven't they?
I think we have.
But Kevin, what I'm saying is that, there is, I mean, there's a certain exclusivity. There's a certain concrete black and white exclusivity. There is no way to the Father but by me, said Jesus Christ. And there's a belief that, I'm sorry, some would even believe if you're Roman Catholic, you're going to burn in hell. If you're Jewish, you're going to burn in hell, let alone if you have no belief in the first place. And I think that that's what's turned a lot of people off.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And the dangerous assumption that has happened is there's some within the Protestant Christian faith, which I have a background of as well, that have forgotten that other people have read the Bible and know it about, if not better, as well as some of the people that read it now. So there is a critical element to that. I think people can see beyond a simple dogma into some sort of intelligent discussion. I think that that's where religion has lost a lot of its credibility, is sort of these blanket statements without any background or depth behind them when people can see something completely different.
I want to get to the text line here because we've got some great comments coming in. Farm Kid says, the difference between a man of science and a man of faith. Provide evidence of a higher being, a man of science will accept it. Provide evidence that there is no higher being, a man of faith will not accept it. Can it really be a debate if one side sticks its head in the sand? That from Farm Kid. Grant says the majority of religion is positive and should be personal choice. When one tries to imprint their beliefs on others or takes an extremist standpoint, regardless of the faith system, it turns negative and destructive. And Beer Slayer says, listen, speaking as a Christian, I don't believe it's my task to defend the Bible. It's my mission to live in a relationship with Christ and man. Those are the two greatest commandments. Says Beer Slayer, I am flawed and I will do this imperfectly. I'll get to responses from both Kevin Olnick and Luke Fevin. Faith versus atheism, a Friday morning roundtable right here on Ched. Hanging out here in studio with Kevin Olnick and Luke Fevin. It's faith versus atheism, a Friday morning roundtable debate, and you are a big part of it on the text line at 630. Kevin, Tyler, listening in out of Westlock, says Kevin seems to be a very level-headed Christian with progressive values. How did he get this progressive view, and why does the general Christian perspective not come across as this progressive?
For me, that's a little bit of a long story. I had a bit of an experience in a church where something was handled in a way that I didn't appreciate it, and it made me look and examine my faith in a clearer way. And typically what happens in situations like that, I think what commonly happens with people that go to more of a progressive or quote unquote moderate faith position is something within their life has impacted them to re-examine their faith in another manner, and whatever that is. For everybody, it's a little bit personal, but I think that's sort of the personal reflection and the personal examination is what comes forward with that, and then I think that leaps people into something a little bit more critical thinking. But I do want to ask Luke a question about progressive, because I think that this will lead us in a little bit here. We talked a little bit about extremism within religion. Previous texter mentioned that. However, that label can come up a little bit within atheism as well, can it not?
People label atheists. But
there have been times when some of the representatives, quote unquote, of the atheism position have come across a little bit stronger than they've intended to. And I don't need to pick on any names because you know who they are, and they're in the public eye as well. How do you, as an atheist or an anti-theist, deal with that perspective as well? And kind of talk a little bit briefly about extremism from your perspective.
Well, first of all, let's go back. Atheism is simply not having a belief in God.
Okay.
Right? So that's it. You can be a member of the atheist club and be anywhere then, or have a belief on anything beyond that. And there are people that have this conversation from my side the way that I would like us to have this conversation. And there are people that have it softer, and there are people that have it harder or more shrilly. and I would disagree with both of those. So, but everyone's free to come to the table and have their say. And what I will say is that in terms of extreme atheism and atheist fanaticism, the worst you're going to suffer is all caps. And so when it comes to extremism, I think extreme atheism is we've got a pretty good track record in that at least it is just with dialogue, even if sometimes it's disrespectful.
But I think the point that I'm trying to make, though, or the question I'm trying to dig out, or is that type of the behavior of, no matter what perspective, whether it be someone from faith or someone from atheism or whatever it is, it's unhealthy, and I think that the goal of humanity should be a healthy, clear perspective. I think that's where you and I would absolutely agree on.
You're describing humanism.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah. We've got a break here for the 11:30 news. When we come back, more with Kevin Olenick and Luke Fevin. We'll get to your takes on the text line as well. You can submit it right now at 6:30. Here's the news. Having a Friday morning roundtable discussion with Luke Fevin and Kevin Olenick in studio in just a moment, but we wanted to, on the news front, let you know very quickly. Victoria School is currently in a lockdown. We'll have more information coming up in the noon news. This following a call, police to the Royal Alexandra Hospital just under an hour ago, following an alleged assault with a weapon. One male in hospital receiving treatment for injuries. One male suspect currently at large who left on foot in a southwest direction from the hospital. Again, police called to the Royal Alexandra Hospital right around 10:40 a.m. this morning. Victoria School currently in lockdown. We'll have full details for you coming up in the noon news. Luke Fevin is the director of the Society of Edmonton Atheists, also a self-described secular rights advocate and activist. Kevin Olenick is the man behind the Agree or Disagree podcast, a self-described man of faith. Gentlemen, thanks for hanging around here for this second half hour. Where should we pick up? Because the discussion has been just as lively off-air as it has been on-air. In just a minute, I'd like to get to prayer with City Council, but Kevin, you had a point you wanted to make.
So there was a tweet that just came out from someone
Mark Pavlich.
Mark Pavlich. I don't know who he is.
He's kind of a big deal. He owns the Maximum Fighting Championship.
Oh, okay. Well, I've never met him personally, but he basically said the tweet is, "I love atheists, especially when they meet God on their deathbed." And to me, that kind of stuff, as a man of faith and a man of faith, quote unquote, bothers me immensely, because this is the type of stuff that Luke has every right to be angry about. You have no idea what someone is going to go through on their deathbed. You could make any assumptions based on your biblical literacy or not, but the reality is you don't know. And stuff like that really is part of what Ryan was talking about earlier, about the question about religious credibility. It's stuff like that was where we lose it. We don't know really what's going to happen. And
you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to say we don't know, because don't you automatically concede when you say that?
No, I don't think that I don't concede anything in that sense. I think that that's part of being honest as a person. I mean, sure, I have a faith and belief that there's a certain thing that happens, but it's like to say to someone, yeah, I know that certain atheists on their deathbed are going to a certain place. That's pretty presumptuous of me, and really missing the point of what that whole conversation about afterlife is really about. I would recommend people, and there's going to be some texters that don't like this, but one book that I would recommend that people pick up is Love Wins by Rob Bell, because it talks a little bit about that heaven and hell conversation.
What do you think about what he just said?
I think Kevin's just covered that. If the way that you want me to bring me to God is with threats, then I think you've already lost.
That's kind of how religion works, though, isn't it? I mean, it's the ultimate Pascal's wager. People call it fire insurance. They adhere to the calling of Christianity or whatever their belief system is because they want to be a part of that afterlife. And the thought of an eternity of the fires of hell and the gnashing of teeth petrifies them so much that they live their life here on earth under a certain parameters.
Yeah, and really, if you read Scripture carefully, that's not the point of it. It's not the point of fire insurance. There's so much that we have been called to as a faith community to participate in and be positive about. I wish we were known earlier when the folks from the Pride conversation were on it. One of the things that struck me is they wanted to be, and they were really focused on being an inclusive community. I want faith to have that same notion of the inclusive community. I think that that's what we were called to. I think that that's what that standard should be. We should be known for being some of the most compassionate, caring, loving people in our community, and yet we're known for exactly the opposite. And it makes it very difficult in terms of having a legitimate conversation around that.
I want to talk about prayer in council chambers. There was obviously it was big news across Canada as a community in Quebec was told by the Supreme Court that they had to stop praying before meetings. It impacted city councils even here in Edmonton, despite the fact that, Luke, as I know you know, Edmonton City Council had been accepting prayer and meditation from many different community groups, First Nations groups, people of very different faith backgrounds, but you seem to see this as a non-starter. You were insistent that there be no prayer or meditation before council meetings. How come?
Because I agree with the Supreme Court of Canada. And the Supreme Court has been very clear on this on a number of rulings over the years, but was spectacularly clear in the Sir Corny ruling out of Quebec recently that addressed this. The word I think that stood out to me in that ruling was abstinence, and that was that the state must stay out of the business of religion. That the state has no business either being for religion or against religion, promoting religion, or suggesting that religion is a good thing or a bad thing, that the state must abstain, and therefore opening meetings by promoting the concept of giving word offerings to deities clearly infringes upon that. And can I just say, we're talking about some of the issues that I have with religion. If you sometimes religious people can be very zealous in the pursuit of favouring or privileging their position, and right now, this ruling was very clear. City Council, no prayers to God, but in New Brunswick, I think right now there's a mayor there that's going, I don't care what the Supreme Court of Canada says. I'm the mayor, I'm a Christian, and we're doing prayer. And we see that a lot with a lot of issues. We see it with school prayer, funnily enough, in our public schools here in Alberta, where people go, hey, I'm Christian, I want prayer, we don't care about the law, the rules, or the rights of others, and we're going to do it.
Well, I kind of like what Mayor Nenshi did in Calgary, and it's sort of, he made a blanket statement, this is what we're going to do. We pretty much, in a nutshell, eliminated prayer and went on to something a little bit more reflective. I think it becomes a little bit difficult in prayer in a public space because the fact of the matter is I think that there is a perception, unfortunately, that you are, as the New Brunswick mayor, perhaps someone will feel that he is only going to be a representative for the Christians in his area as opposed to the actual job of being a politician is to represent all constituents. However, I think that what is being missed in all of this is why people pray. And I think that there is a really important factor of that. It's not magic. It's not because it's not to give an instant something like I'm not going to have money grow on trees beside us here, Luke, or anything like that. I think that there's something really meaningful about prayer, and I feel that within this debate we've lost the actual. We haven't really discussed what prayer is, and for prayer, there's a lot of different meanings. It can be meditation, it can be reflective, it can be all of those things, and I think it's important to unpack why people want to pray, and I think that going forward, I hope that conversation becomes an important element of that.
I think the question is just whether or not council chambers is the appropriate venue.
I don't think it is anymore. I think it's not. It's not representative of all people. All of the people on council would not be of a particular faith. I don't think that making a prayer to start something is not something I would support.
But to me, and Kevin, not to cut you off, but and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the way that Edmonton's been conducting its business, its prayer business, its meditation business before the meetings. But as I just sort of briefly detailed, to me, it was almost an exercise in respect and inclusion in so many ways. As Luke, I know that you were offered an invitation as an atheist to show up.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that invitation didn't actually pan out or go very well. In fact, the city has been quite poor at responding. We got this on-air offer, but in the background, we got nothing.
Interesting. So, back to the text line here. Steve says, following a press conference, a politician opens it up for Q&A so that there can be clarity on what was said. After a sermon, no pastor will open up the Q&A because they consider that nothing more than second-guessing. The problem with that is that people are left with their own idea of what was said, hence the confusion. Another listener says, just curious, what has been at the root? What has been the largest source of war or conflict around the world? I'll treat that as a rhetorical question. I take the point. And Carson says, if the threat of hell is real, then the most loving thing anyone can do is warn others about it. More with Luke Fevin and Kevin Olenek right after this. Fascinating conversation with Luke Fevin and Kevin Olenek. We're talking about atheism versus faith. Scotty out of Vegreville says God loves us all so much that he created a place called hell to burn us for all eternity if we don't love him back. There's another listener here, Trevor, who says the separation of church and state originated to keep the state out of the church, but today it's used to remove the church from the state. Chris says, I'm stumped. Why is it that I'm not gay, but I have to have tolerance for others, even to the point of my tax dollars paying for painting rainbows on crosswalks, but there's no tolerance for me to be able to pray before council? And then we've got an interesting take here from Chris, who says religion really was not the cause of war. Human arrogance and hate are the primary causes.
I'm pleased. What's the name of the guy that just wrote in there?
That's Chris.
Good job, Chris. One of the things that frustrates me as an atheist is, when religion just gets hung out to dry, is this blanket, blame it for absolutely everything. It's the thing, most of the wars of the world are caused by religion. Completely not true. Listen, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say religion has a lot to answer for, but we've got to be realistic when we address any issue. We have to be realistic, and I'm certainly not pinning all the wars of the world on religion. It's down to man and greed and fear.
We've had a lot of talk about the Catholic school system lately. It's found itself in the crosshairs when it comes to the implementation of Bill 10. It's found itself in the crosshairs when it comes to alleged muzzling of elected trustees sitting on the Edmonton Catholic Board. Kevin, if you had to argue for the existence of a Catholic school board, would you and could you?
To a certain extent, yes, because I do think that there is value in having people of like-minded within a community, and to a certain extent, because of the fact that there is Catholicism is a pretty strong component, and there is a lot of value for that. Yes, I could. However, I think that the other side to that is there needs to be some specific curriculum conversations going on around what is going on. I think that the frustration with how the Catholic schools handled specifically the GSAs was they held their head in the sand and pretty much said that we don't have a problem, when students and parents alike were actually saying, no, that's not true. There is a problem. We have an issue. We need to fix this. It's a simple thing. You want to set up a club. Okay, great. I don't understand how we made this such a difficult, complicated, unbelievable process. I think that's very frustrating there.
Luke, do you believe that the Catholic School Board should continue to receive public funds?
No, of course not. Look, I'll go on record here and say this. On the GSA issue, and I think the Catholic board should be measured by the public on this. The Catholic boards are going to dance. They're going to walk back, calling these clubs GSAs in their schools. The public, the Albertan public, spoke very, very clearly through Bill 10 and through the Conservative Party what they expected from these schools, the behaviour that they expected. And what's going to happen right now is they're walking back, calling these clubs GSAs, and what they're going to do is they are going to use the public's money to fight a legal battle against the public to not do what the public wants them to do. You're darn right they should stop receiving public money.
Well, then if I'm and I'm not a parent, but if I'm a parent and I'm not getting exactly what I'm expected from the education, I have the right to pull them out and go somewhere else.
Sure. And there's private schools, and you can do that.
There's private schools, absolutely. You can go to and there's no, I mean, lots of Catholics, remember, go to public school or go to a different type of school because they want a specific kind of education. But Catholic schools, there's still a value in that, right? I still think that there's, because of...
What is the value?
There's two. The big value, I think, is community. I think the sense
Public
of
schools don't have community.
They do have community. There's nothing wrong with having two separate types of community and giving people an option to either do Catholic, public, or private. I don't see that there's a problem with that.
I just think there
needs to be a standard. We need to say, specifically stuff like this with GSAs, we need to say, you know what, we need to make sure that this is what it is and people are following exactly what it is. And they're accountable, but there's still a value in having a diverse education.
I think that there should be public and private. And we can talk other days about where people's tax allocated dollars would go when it comes to funding schools based on the enrollment of their children or based on their choosing. Then you also open up the can of public tax dollars going to private school systems that may hold values that don't adhere to what we've commonly held as Canadians. A whole other topic for a whole other day. I have to pay a couple of bills. We're back with Kevin Olenek and Luke Fevin right after this. On the text line, AM/FM says, why is everyone wringing their hands over public versus private when it comes to school funding? Get rid of them all. Implement an unfettered voucher system. Let the funding follow the child. The schools that work will benefit from large enrollment. The ones that don't will fail, as well they should. Listener out of Lethbridge says, I am an atheist. I have no problem with religion, though, as long as you're not pushing it on me and my kids. I'm also the mother who complained about the Lord's Prayer in that Tabor school. I asked for them to start a group for children who want it before class, at lunch, and breaks. But the parents' school board wants it and held a vote to take away my rights. And here's one for you, Luke. A listener says, I looked into atheism. I found that atheists refer to themselves as the educated elite. I thought it was arrogant. I can't refer to myself as better than another. I was raised Christian, but I currently do not have faith. This is interesting. Keep up the great conversation. I need more information.
I have no idea. We may be arrogant, but that's a personal thing. I think just coming to a conclusion that there are no gods is not an arrogant position, and further, I think it's the religions that claim to know everything.
I think knowing that there's a God isn't necessarily an arrogant position either. I think that what I loved about the text, though, is, to me, I think today, this hour has been fantastic for me. I've really enjoyed this, but I think we've only really scratched the surface of some really deep issues here. And I would encourage people like him to keep exploring, keep finding things. I mean, I have a podcast. Luke's discussion group is great as well. There's lots of information out there to make a critical, informed decision.
As a matter of fact, I know the two of you are going to be recording a podcast right after we go off the air. If you want to hear that on Kevin's podcast, Agree or Disagree, be sure to follow him on Twitter. My thanks to these two guests. If you didn't hear your message read now, today, there's a good chance you'll hear it on the Monday mailbag. Have an amazing weekend. It's one of the best weekends in Edmonton on the calendar year. Thanks for being a part of today's conversation. One love, friends.